We need to establish the exact nature of human consciousness. Is it a structural, necessary component of the universe, or is it a mechanical byproduct? Are we the ocean itself, or just the ink left behind on a page? To answer this, we look to the 11th century Persian philosopher Naser Khosrow. In his foundational text, the Khwan al-Akhawan, Khosrow attacks this problem by stripping away theology and relying purely on ontological architecture. This flowchart maps Khosrow's Neoplatonic cosmology, illustrating his strict distinction between two concepts, a part, or juz, and an effect, or athar. The universal intellect flows into the universal soul, which then branches down into our individual human souls. Khosrow demands we determine if those individual souls act as integrated parts of the network or passive effects of it. He uses a precise analogy. A human writing a letter is the cause. The writing on the page is the effect. The ink has no knowledge of the author. It possesses no consciousness, no agency, and no underlying connection to the essence of the person who wrote it. An effect is a dead end. Khosrow presents a stark dichotomy. If human consciousness is an effect of the universe, our existence is entirely passive. But if we are a part, we share the exact substance and responsibility of the system that generated us. Khosrow builds his proof methodically. His first premise focuses on agency. The human soul actively orders its immediate environment. We extract raw materials, invent tools, and shape matter. We perform the exact same structuring action on a micro level that the universal soul performs on the macro level of nature. This logic model visualizes Khosrow's second premise, teleology. An effect, represented by the static node, inherently lacks self-awareness. It cannot turn back to seek out its creator. A part, however, possesses a dynamic upward-pointing vector, representing a structural drive to reconnect with the whole. We see this vector in human behavior. The human mind actively and persistently attempts to decode the rules of reality, seeking to understand universal truths. Khosrow argues that a mere byproduct would never attempt to analyze the engine that produced it. The fact that we do proves a mathematical, active linkage to the universal intellect. Because our minds actively hunt for answers, rather than resting in passivity, the human drive for knowledge operates as structural proof of our cosmic agency. Khosrow's third premise establishes human differentiation. If we were strictly deterministic effects, bound by physics without internal agency, every human soul would be morally and intellectually identical at baseline. We would all be standard outputs of the same equation. This visualization models the mechanism Khosrow calls epistemic ascension. While human souls begin in an identical baseline state, they differentiate through the rigorous acquisition of knowledge and the exercise of moral agency. The sparks process incoming data, and through intellectual labor, they crystallize into highly complex, varied geometric structures. This process of differentiation is the mechanical graduation of the soul. By acquiring knowledge, the soul elevates out of its initial unformed state and locks into place as a permanent, immortal component of the universal whole. The universal soul does not operate as a monolithic block requiring submission. It is a vast architecture that relies on highly individualized, differentiated minds to achieve completion. We find the emotional translation of Khosrow's rigid logical proofs in the work of the 13th century mystic poet Jalal al-Din Rumi. Rumi opens his masterwork, the Mathnawi, with a famous parable. Listen to the reed and the tale it tells, how it sings of separation. He describes a reed cut from its bed to make a flute, its music driven entirely by the sorrow of being severed from its source. This metaphor maps directly onto Khosrow's ontology. The pain of the reed is the teleological proof in action. A severed part retains the structural memory of the whole, and its longing is the mechanism of return. Rumi distills this into a second maxim: every part is drawn to its whole. He aligns mystical yearning with the physics of intellectual aspiration. The pull the soul feels toward understanding reality is gravity functioning on a metaphysical level. The emotional longing described by the mystics is mathematically identical to Khosrow's philosophical vector of teleology. Both map the exact same upward trajectory. Moving to the classical West, we encounter the 3rd century Neoplatonist philosopher Plotinus, who formalized a remarkably similar framework centuries before Khosrow. This split-screen table outlines Plotinus's structural model of emanation on the left. He proposed the anima mundi, or world soul. Reality flows downward from a single source of perfection, the One, cascading through the intellect and eventually arriving at individual human souls embedded in matter. Plotinus argued for epistrophe, the necessary return to the One through rigorous philosophical contemplation. This mirrors Khosrow's demand for intellectual pursuit. Both philosophers identify the acquisition of truth as the mechanism for upward mobility. Classical Western and Islamic thought share an identical underlying architecture here, a downward emanation into physical reality, requiring an active, conscious, upward return by the individual. Now look at the right side of the table. In 17th century Europe, Baruch Spinoza published his Ethics, presenting a model that sharply breaks from this tradition. Spinoza championed substance monism. He argued that God, or nature, is the single infinite substance that exists. Consequently, individual humans are not distinct entities with free will. We are merely deterministic modes, or temporary expressions of that infinite substance. The contrast is strict. Spinoza reduces human consciousness to a passive effect, reacting deterministically to physical laws. Khosrow elevates human consciousness to an active part, possessing the agency to ascend vertically. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear what you think. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating content for you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. By adopting Khosrow's model over Spinoza's, we firmly restore human agency and absolute moral responsibility to the cosmos. We can pressure test Khosrow's system by cross-examining it with ancient Indian philosophy, specifically the work of Adi Shankara and the Advaita Vedanta school. This Venn diagram maps Advaita Vedanta against Islamic Neoplatonism. Shankara defines Brahman as universal reality and Atman as the individual soul. The core maxim of this school is Tat Vam Asi, meaning thou art that, asserting the complete unity of the individual and the universe. We find a clear parallel with Khosrow. Both systems agree that separation from the universal mind is a starting state of ignorance, called Maya in Vedanta, that must be overcome by acquiring deep intellectual truth, or jnana. However, they diverge massively regarding the final endpoint of this journey. Advaita Vedanta demands the complete dissolution of the individual into the whole. The drop of water returns to the ocean and ceases to be a drop. Khosrow rejects dissolution. In his framework, the individual soul does not melt away. Instead, through the acquisition of knowledge, it solidifies. It becomes a mathematically unique, permanently distinct structural part, locking into the universal mind like a piece of complex architecture. While both philosophical systems seek ultimate universal unity, Khosrow demands the strict preservation of your individual, unique intellect to achieve it. Through Khosrow, Rumi, Plotinus, Spinoza, and Shankara, human civilization has continuously mapped the exact same problem, locating our structural relationship to the cosmos. Khosrow's rigorous logical proofs leave us with a clear conclusion. We are not cosmic accidents, and we are not merely the deterministic footprints left behind by a moving universe. When an individual mind engages in the pursuit of truth, it is the mechanism of the part finally recognizing its integral role within the whole. Through our deliberate, conscious acquisition of knowledge, humanity functions as the very process of the universe actively figuring itself out. Intellectual curiosity and the drive to understand reality operate as the literal ontological proof of our cosmic design. We are not the effect of the universe, we are its architecture.